and to share with you, and you can take a look at them. As you know, we have a new educational page at Starting Point on our website, and we're doing a lot of podcasts. So tomorrow, I get to do one. Loretta and I are going to do a podcast on the spirituality of sports. Should really be interesting. So if you guys want to come and join us, I'll be doing it at 12 noon tomorrow. Okay, so if you have the opportunity, you want to come in, the link for it is in the chat room. You can check that out, or you can go to the website and get it too. That'll be 12 o'clock tomorrow. Okay, so we'll have some fun. But I love enjoying that one because that's a big one for me. Anyway, I also want to mention the fact that, as I mentioned last week, when we finish next week's session, we have 2 sessions now coming up on the inner child. When we finish next week's session, if you're interested in doing those 7 questions and getting in touch with me, I'll gladly go over them with you and show you what to do with them. So those questions are found under Vince's Corner in the website, right next to the series on codependency. You'll see the 7 questions. You can download them. Okay. I also want to mention that.
Vince, excuse me, I'm afraid we moved those questions under additional resources this afternoon so you could find them easier. I apologize for interrupting you, but
It's okay.
Now it's the last section on the Vince's Corner, and it says additional resources, and you'll see 7 questions.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That's great. Makes it a lot easier. Okay. So, and also we can't pass a basket. So we have a Venmo account that's in the chat room also, if you can help out in any way. Okay. Now I'm going to begin by doing a reading from the language of letting go. And I picked parts of readings from one of my favorite things, the recovery prayer. And I picked parts of that to kind of share with you. Our higher power. For the next 24 hours. In recovery, we live life one day at a time, an idea requiring an enormous amount of faith. We refuse to look back unless healing from the past is part of today's work. We look ahead only to make plans. We focus on this day's activity, living it to the best of our ability. I pray for the knowledge of your will for me only. We surrender to God's will. We stop trying to control. We settle for a life that is manageable. We trust the higher power's will for us, that it's good, generous, and with direction, and the power to carry that through. Some of recovery is accepting powerlessness. An important part of recovery is claiming the power to take care of ourselves. Sometimes we need to do things that are frightening or painful. Sometimes we need to step out, step back, or step forward. But we need to always want the help of a power greater than ourselves to do that. We'll never be called upon to do anything that we won't be empowered to do. Today and every day, I can call upon an energizing power source to help me. That power is the God of my understanding. I will always ask for what I need. I wanted to kind of put that there because I want to talk tonight a lot about the concept of the inner child. And we're going to be spending 2 weeks on the inner child. And one of the things I'll be talking about, which really will go into next week, not today, is what I refer to as the difference between what I call codependency and interdependency. Just for those who may have not been here, when we did this series, the first 5 sessions of this 10-week series concentrated on what codependency is and the traits and characteristics of a codependent. And then the next 5 sessions are on the recovery process. We defined codependency back then as any person, place, or thing that I have built a dependency on. It means I cannot function without it. That makes my life unmanageable or makes my life crazy. That could be a substance, that could be a person, that could be a situation, that could be a family member. The key is dependability and unmanageability. Interdependency are things we need in the daily life. For example, we're interdependent on the electric company. We're interdependent right now on Zoom. These are healthy dependencies, things we need in our life, but they make our life healthy. They don't make our life unmanageable. And so we look at these things And we'll talk more about that in the closing session next week. But I want to emphasize that because we also talked about recovery. And we talked about the fact that in order to do recovery, we have to go back and do what I refer to as family of origin work, which is our history, because we talked about codependency as the root of all addiction, and that the foundation of addiction, the foundation of codependency, comes from those initial years of our life. The foundations comes from our childhood. And so what I want to emphasize tonight, and I did that in the reading, I want to emphasize three things. I have a name for this. It's one of my nickname things. It's called the three-legged stool. Now, we refer to that in recovery as the 3 first steps. But in the process of doing inner child work, the three-legged stool involves a child, our inner child, that part of us that is part of who we'll always be, the adult in us, or the higher parent, as I call it, and of course, the higher power, the strength we get from our source. And so when we do this process of inner child work, we have to understand how things are flowing within us as individuals and as people. For example, there's a child inside of each and every one of us, a beautiful, special little child. That little child is a part of us that is a free spirit. It's a part of us that likes to play. It's a part of us that celebrates. It's a part of us that really doesn't have a lot of boundaries, just wants to have a lot of fun. And also, unfortunately, sometimes that little child also wants what it wants when it wants it, and it wants it right away. Mothers that have raised children know what I'm talking about. All of us who have raised children. Basically, if a child's hungry at 2:00 in the morning, a baby, it doesn't sit there and say, now, I don't want to wake mommy and daddy up. So I guess I won't eat until 7:00. No, I'm hungry, feed me. It's the basic instincts that come into play. One of the reasons I talk about that is because we have to understand how that child needs to have a higher adult or an adult to be able to give it a sense of balance and responsibility. So the adult in us, very many times, has a tendency to be organized, more responsible, able to make adult decisions. And so we have to learn how do we get the communication going between the adult and the child. Let me begin with the child, then I'll bring the other two in a few minutes. There are two, when we look at the inner child, we describe the inner child as having two sets of personalities. Every one of us, no exception, and let's face it, we're human beings, have come from some sort of a dysfunctional family. Dysfunctionality is part of life. I've said this so many times that dysfunctionality is there for us to grow. And so we go through different areas. So we have what we call the trauma child and we have the love child. The trauma child is the child that's going through a lot of hurt, a lot of pain, a lot of mixed messages. For example, visualize a little child in a crib and its parents or the adults standing over it. It's almost like to a little child, we are the giants. It's whatever the giants tell me to do, I got to do. But again, if I experience things such as fear, worry, guilt, shame, or addiction, or behavior, abuse, all these things, these are the messages coming from the giants, as I call them, or the adults. The child picks up the energy coming from others. And so remember something about a child. A child does not hear words. A child feels energy. And that's where the love child comes into play. Because the love child is the free spirit, spontaneous. I always say the little Snoopy inside of each and every one of us. The child that has that spontaneity, that energy. And unfortunately, sometimes the trauma child drains the energy of the love child. But then later on, the love child is going to be the healer in the process of healing, not only for the inner child, but later on for the adult too. We'll talk about that. On the other side, we have the adult or our adult personality, and we have what I call the two types of adults. We have the adult, what I refer to as the adult that is always trying to figure everything out, the analytical adult in us. Those of us that are always trying to find answers to everything. Even when there aren't answers, we're still trying to find answers. And so a lot of times we frustrate ourselves trying to figure things out. And that's the part of us sometimes that makes us crazy. You heard me say this so many times that this thing up here, I call it the manipulation tower, the con tower, the figuring out tower. It drives you nuts and makes you crazy. I told you plenty of times when I die, I'm going to tell God, you made a mistake when you created us. Should have put an off-on switch up here so I could shut it off and break it. But I don't think he'll listen to me with that one anyway. But I'm going to have to get my point in anyway. But I bring it out because that analytical child, that analytical adult can become a little crazy sometimes, and sometimes even getting angry. The other part of it is what I refer to as the spontaneous adult. The spontaneous adult is the adult that is able to listen, is aware, is present, and will listen to the child. But not listen to words, to listen to the child's spirit, what's going on inside the child. We see an example of this. If you wake up in the morning, the alarm clock goes off. Like most of us, you like to take the alarm clock and you know what you can do with it, but you can't do that. You got to get up and you got to go to work. The little child inside of you says, stay home, play, let's have fun, let's have a good time. The adult in us says, I got to get up and go to work. So, but the adult listens to the child and has a communication with the child and actually says, I know you want to play, I know you want to have fun, but I have to go. I'm responsible, I got to go to work. But when I get home today, then we can play, we can have fun, and we can do things together. See the difference? Instead of getting angry at the child, I listen to what the child has to say. And there's the key thing. Many of us in growing up, myself included, never had a voice. We could never truly express what was going on inside of us. And so as a result, then we have a tendency very many times just to be able to live those things that were given to us as children. I talked about perception last week, you remember, because we all perceive things differently. To give you an idea, when I was born back in the 40s, my mother, basically, I'm an only child, an Italian mother, and my mother was very possessive, very controlling, and very smothering. She gave me too much love. She overloved, as she called it. But literally, she was always protecting me. Now, my cousin, who was raised in a home where her father was a violent alcoholic, her mother was always angry and frustrated. When her and I had a discussion, she would say to me, well, if you think your mother's overbearing, do me a favor. Let me have her and you take mine. Because she's coming at it from her perspective. I'm coming at it from my perception. But at the same time, we're looking at it through a different set of eyes. She would have loved to have the mother I had. So it's interesting when we look at the process of it. And so when we talk about the inner child, talk about this interconnection going on between the adult and the child. And that's inside of each and every one of us. Unfortunately for codependents, because we have a tendency to either be all adult or all child. We're always at the opposite ends of the spectrum. As a result, then we have to learn how to balance things out, how to bring them together. And that involves listening. That involves being open. That involves patience. That involves time. And very many times the adult in us must make time to literally listen to that child, help that child. And we talk about this in the self-parenting concept, because we learn that when we do our work, and I'll talk about this in a couple of minutes. I want to show you something in a couple of minutes how this works. But basically, we need to be able to give the child a voice. Then we, as the higher parent, have to listen to that voice and rely on the faith and gift of a higher power to help us to go through a process of healing. So what the adult is trying to do with the child is help the child to go through a healing process, a forgiveness process, and learning to develop a sense of peace and a sense of serenity. And that's really important. But to do that, it involves constructive listening. It involves being able to have a voice. I don't know about you, I never had a voice, and I'm glad I have one today. And today I can parent my little boy. I'm able to understand what's going on. I can feel my feelings today. I didn't do that for 44 years of my life. I was literally dead on the inside. But I realized today how important it is to open up that little child and begin to experience new things in the course of your life. And that's extremely important. I want to show you this by doing something which I think will help you to understand it a lot better. It's a process we use in therapy called sculpting. Now, I have to say this before I begin this process. Please don't try to do this at home on your own, okay? This is something that was done in therapy. It's a process we take people through to begin to meet their inner child in the trauma stage, and then to use the love stage of resculpting to be able to heal and help that child to heal. Now, don't get nervous. I'm not going to use any of you. I'm going to use my own story and my own concept of how this was done for me in my therapeutic process. And to me, it clarified everything in the course of my life. Having done my family of origin work, my therapist, and we did this in a group setting. Now, I can't, it's kind of difficult to do this on Zoom, because when I did it in the lecture hall, I actually had people play these roles and we acted it out. So we're going to act it out in our mind today, okay? So you kind of go with me on it. Try to visualize me as a little boy. Visualize me laying flat on my back on the floor. And my therapist took a chair and placed it over my legs. Now, he had someone sit on my legs to visualize my mother, and basically she straddled my legs. It's like I was still in the womb. It's almost like I was still connected to the womb. And literally the symbolic thing of the sculpting was that my mother basically controlled everything and controlled my life. Behind my mother was my father, and my father was always Mr. Wonderful and Mr. Fantastic. He was also the greatest enabler on the face of the earth, and always did my mother's bidding and made sure she was okay and made sure everything she did was all right. But literally, in many ways, he lost himself. He was the glue that held our family together. So I have him on my mother's back, but he has his back to my mother because their relationship is simply functional. Then on top of my head, they took one of the people to stand right over my head. And that represented depression. As a child, I was told by a therapist, I was probably depressed since I was 2 years old. But depression is standing over my head. So the child's on the floor, depression is on my head, my mother's on my legs in control. So the child's totally immobilized. On my mother's back, there's a person standing with hands on my mother's shoulders. My mother had an addictive personality. She was into amphetamines and also a compulsive overeater. She had a very addictive personality. So that person represented addiction. Then next to my mother on a chair stood, elevated the Catholic Church. Because growing up in the 40s, my whole life was centralized around the church. My mother planned the priesthood for me, planned everything for me. Even when I was in the 6th grade, I had a portable altar in my room so I could practice. My mother literally groomed me and got me ready, which she wanted me to be, following a lot of Italian customs. And so as a result, the church played a dominant role. But coming from the church and from my mother, we then had people play the issues surrounding the child. And so the major issues that were played in my particular sculpting were fear, guilt, and worry. They're all control issues. They came both from the church back in the 40s, was a different place back then, and also from my mother and from my family. And as a result, those issues surrounded the child. On the other side of the child was shame, isolation, and a lot more fear. I isolated, I felt a lot of shame because I was embarrassed a lot. And so as a result, I literally lived in this little cocoon. And as a result, then my therapist also went the extra mile and covered me with a blanket. The only thing exposed was my head, which he did that so I would understand being smothered and what smother was really all about. So in doing the inner child work, they actually created a visual of what my childhood looked like. It took a Polaroid camera shot of it and basically gave it to me afterwards. And then also, then they did something called re-sculpting. They had the adult, me as an adult, begin the process of re-sculpting my concept and going through a healing process. And how we did that was basically on the back of my mother was addiction. And so what I had to learn was from my mother, I was given an addictive personality. It's part of who I am. My father gave me my codependency tendencies. And so as an adult, I had to be able to get into recovery, do my work, go through my history, realize the fact how important it was. And so now we have a visual of me standing on the side of this sculptor as an adult. Well, as an adult with a powerful person next to me, helping me out. It's called recovery. I now have a support system and people to help me with this process. The next thing we do then is we actually had addiction taken away from my mother, my addictive personality, and I took addiction and put it into, back then they called it a jail cell, to put it in jail for a period of time. Even though it's not going to go away. It's part of who I am, it's part of my makeup. Then basically, they dealt with the thing standing on my head called depression. So the adult in me had to face my depression, embrace it. Here's the key. Accept it, embrace it, learn from it, and grow from it. Because what is depression? Depression is basically anger turned in on yourself. And so as an adult, I had to give my little child permission to get angry. And I was able to tell that little child that anger is not a negative emotion if it's used properly and is processed properly. It's actually a healthy emotion. So my adult was giving my child permission to feel anger and be in touch with anger. Then I was able to look at all the issues. And I'm going to go each one of them because we'd be here till late. But I basically want to be able to look at each of the issues, fear, guilt, and worry, and confront them with my anger, get my feelings out about them, face my fears, get in touch with my isolation, look at all the things I have to do as an adult, and my higher parent or my adult in self-parenting is now helping me to overcome face my fears, to face the worry, to make changes in the course of my life. But none of this can be done without my connection to a higher power or a higher source. Because in order to face my fear and face all these things, I develop a sense of faith, a sense of belief, to be able to realize the fact that I have the power to help this little child to overcome these things. So as a result, I realize today that faith does move mountains, that faith is such a gift. And that if you really develop a sense of faith and belief, you can heal almost anything and beautiful things will come to you. But you will discover new things about yourself too. So my higher parent is helping this little child to go through a healing process right now. Once I've gone through the issues, then my higher parent's going to ask the Catholic Church to come down off the pedestal. I had to be able to confront my feelings about the church, be able to release them and get them out, and then to be able to embrace it and make it become a different part of my life. The church is still part of my life today, but it's no longer on a pedestal. And through recovery and the gift of recovery, I've learned to take what I can use and leave the rest. So it has a different relationship to me today. Then my higher parent has to allow that little child to tell mommy to get off my legs, and to be able to express my feelings to my mother. And we call that healthy anger because I'm doing it out of love, out of a process of healing. There's the love child now coming out. I want to be able to get rid of my negative feelings so I can develop a love for my mother. And this process has helped me tremendously to build a totally new relationship with my mother today. You know, you were back 84 and 1985 when I started this process and began to work it. I had a lot of anger towards my family, towards my mother, towards a lot of different things. But once I was able to process that anger, and I was able to be able, as an adult, to help that little child process, give that little child a voice. Now today, I look at my mother as someone very special and very beautiful, and as one of my teachers today. I actually can thank her today for the gift of my addictive personality, because it brought me to the gift of recovery. So I can look at all the things that happen in life and through a healing process, begin to make resolution and begin to finally come to an acceptance and come to a growth process with it. And then I had to be able to finally face my father, tell my father how I felt. I was really angry at him because he never really stepped in and rescued me. He just went along with the game. And yet he taught me so many codependency traits: people pleasing, all wonderful things, always make everybody happy all the time, and don't feel feelings, how to be able to express my feelings to my dad. And my dad gave me a great gift of love. I love my dad. I talk about him all the time. He was a good teacher. He didn't know it, but he was a great teacher. And I learned so much from him. And yet my little child had to be able to build a new relationship with him. So as a result, what's happening is I'm taking that sculpting and resculpting it. Now, my adult has to go and help that little child to get up off its back and stand up, and to finally be able to go through a healing process and begin to understand that that's no longer my family today. My new family is me, recovery, my mom, my dad, my church connected with me, all the different parts of my life, and my issues. Here's the most important part I learned in doing inner child work. My issues are part of me. They're part of who I am. They're not going to go away, but I can face them. I can arrest them. I can embrace them. I can learn from them and grow from them. But on occasion, they will come back to visit. But at least now I have a support system and I have the tools to help me deal with them. Even though on occasion, I'm going to fall back into the pit. I told you this a long time ago. I mentioned that if you really want to learn about life, go to a hospital and go to a heart station, hook yourself up to a heart monitor. And I pray that when you hook yourself up, it goes like this and not like this. If it goes like this, you definitely got a problem. Life is the exact same way. We're going to go through struggle constantly, and struggle is part of life. Mothers in here know exactly what I'm talking about. When you were giving birth to a child, it's almost like that little child didn't want to come out. That little kid was in there saying, I like it in here. I ain't going out there. What are you, crazy? And yet, the struggle of birth is painful. It's a struggle. But then as soon as that child was born, then the energy of love kicked in, the pain went away. That's when we talk about the concept of struggle. Because everything in life that's worthwhile, we have to struggle, we have to work for. It's called a sense of responsibility. And also at the same time, there's a playful part of us, a fun part of us, a happy part of us. How do we blend everything together? That's the key to doing inner child work. So the adult and the child now have a relationship. They can speak, they can talk to each other, they can listen to each other, they can learn from one another. And I'm realizing over and over again, this is the secret to everything we do in life. You know, in AA, they have a beautiful saying, experience, strength, and hope. Every experience we go through in life, no matter what the experience is, no matter where that experience comes from, every experience, if we face it, embrace it, learn from it, acknowledge it, it will someday become our teacher. We'll learn from it. It'll become our strength. Our strengths actually come from our struggle. And that's why I said back in the beginning, dysfunctionality is not a negative thing. It's part of the journey. And so we got to go through things to come to the other side. Even we're experiencing that today because our life took a whole different turn this past year. We're going through a pandemic, we still are. And now we're going through a transition and a change process. But it's something we have to face, but we have to look at it the best we can with positive eyes. And what lessons did we learn from it? What growth has taken place from it? I can look around and I can see so many times the good things that happened to me in my life as a result of this, and to be open to it. And so I've learned, even something like Zoom. Zoom has brought me and connected me with so many people in different parts of the country. You know, my friend Ann from California, Casey from Texas, all these people are interconnected with us today. People coming from Maryland, from different parts of the country, and being able to interact with people, even to the point I'm doing counseling with somebody in Pakistan. In wildest dreams, I never think that would ever happen in my whole entire life. And yet I'm learning that there's a lot more to life. And yes, there's struggle involved in it, there's hurt involved in it, but somehow, in order for us to do our growing, we have to be able to go through our struggle and go through our pain to come to the other side. And that's where the higher parent is so important, because the higher parent takes care of that little child. But that little child takes care of the higher parent too, because that little child teaches us, get out of your head. You need to be there sometimes on your job and places you have to be responsible, okay. But also, you need to have a playful side, a celebration side. You need to be able to heal, enjoy, celebrate life. So everything we're talking about tonight when we do inner child work is developing a balance in our life. And balance is a key to everything we do in life. You have to have some play, some celebration. You have to look at life in a different way. And so you have to realize the fact there really aren't answers to everything. There's just being able to learn and grow and discover things in the course of our journey. I always kind of share this a lot because I like to laugh at myself sometimes. And laughter is a good thing, because I've learned even through pain sometimes that beautiful phrase of live your life to the best of your ability, laugh at least once a day, even when it's not funny. You sometimes just have to laugh, and love. Love is the antidote and the thing, both for the child and for the adult. And that's important. But I just tell you a quick little thing I always love sharing. A long, long time ago, I was actually 20 years old. I really was 20 at one time. I know some of you might not believe it, but I was. That was a long time ago. When I was 20 years old, I had this problem. See, I knew everything, had all the answers. It was totally amazing. Then something happened. I turned 30. I discovered all the questions. And that's the insanity part of this. I actually had the answers before I knew the questions. Then I turned 40 and found out there weren't any answers. And that kind of scared me a little bit. And then finally I got to 50 and I didn't care anymore. I got to 60, I'm starting to have some fun now, enjoy life. I got to 70, let it all hang out. Now in my 80s, oh boy, let's have some fun now and really have a good time. I live in a 55 and over community to see some of the sights in the morning. It's totally amazing. Some of the outfits people walk around in, you know, who cares? Enjoy it, celebrate life. So we have to learn just to loosen up a little bit, to relax a little bit. What is recovery really all about? What is healing really all about? It's about being able to celebrate who you are. We get so caught up sometimes in trying to be somebody else. We think the grass is greener on the other side. No, the secret is to be able to go within and be able to finally discover the beautiful things you have inside of you, the gifts that we have. I mean, I have so much gratitude today because I'll never be able to do half the things I can do today. Even to the point, I never thought I'd write books, do things I'm doing today. I spent years denying all that stuff. I'm discovering things about myself today I can't believe. And I'm having fun too. I'm learning to enjoy. I can't do some of the things I did before, but I can do them now in a different way, of course. I was talking to my granddaughter when she was smaller. We used to go outside in the grass and roll around and have a great time and all that. Well, I really can't roll around like that anymore because I think I would have to go see the chiropractor after I was done. But see, I can laugh about that today. That's the fun part about it. Even growing old becomes almost something special. Because you can look back on your life and you realize the things you've come through. I go into the memorial wall at Starting Point in the lecture hall, see all those names on the wall of people that have come before me, very special people. I walk in the front door of Starting Point. There's a plaque up on the wall, the early founders of our program. And I get sad a little bit because I realize out of the 6 people on that plaque, I'm the only one that's still alive. That's scary. And yet it's beautiful in a way. Memories. So our memories are part of our healing process also. And so in doing inner child work, I have to be able to acknowledge as the higher parent, with the help of my higher power, with the help of others, I'm able to help that child to be able to move to a place to be a child, but also to be a responsible child, to face things. Everything's done through the energy of love. The Course in Miracles teaches something so beautiful. They always say there are 2 words we must look at in life. Fear is something that holds us back. Love makes us face our fears and realize they don't really exist. And so the more we're able to operate through the act of love, then everything goes and flows where it's supposed to flow. And we have to learn. Everything finds its circle. Some people in here have found that out. And the concept is it's amazing how we go around and we find things and things come back and they work and we discover things. It's totally amazing when you come down to it. I realize today I have all my father's tendencies. I have my mother's tendencies. They're part of me. Some of my history, all my history is part of me. And so try to remember your history is your teacher. Your history is your guide. Be open to it. So next week, when I finish the series, I want to do something a little bit different next week. I want to concentrate on prayer, meditation, some visualizations, to go back and meet that little child. And then we'll also talk about codependency and interdependency next week to put this little package together, which is so important. So I'm going to kind of close out with a prayer. And my prayer is for all of you, as it is for me, and for all those who have gone before us, as their names are on the wall at Starting Point, all those special people that are part of our journey. Let us pray. God, we come before you today, and we seek your guidance and your direction. Help us on our journey. Help us to begin to meet and get connected to that little child that's inside of us. Help us to realize that you have given us so many gifts. But everything is the gift you've given us the most is the energy and the power of love, the power of healing, the power of growth. Help us to be open to that power and to realize how special and beautiful we are. To just look at life, even the struggles, the hurt, the pain, things we go through, the celebration, the happiness, the mixture of everything. Teach us whatever our time is on this earth. We don't know how long that is, and that's okay. We don't need to know. We take it one day at a time, live it to the best of our ability. We look at the past through the eyes of learning and through the eyes of growing. We try to be open to the future, wherever that will be, but to live in today and celebrate the moments. God, teach us to appreciate every little moment we have in life, appreciate all the people that are around us, to appreciate who we are. Teach us to celebrate each moment. Teach us to make time to play, take time to work, take time to do different things in the course of our journey. Help us as we try to achieve balance in our life. For you are a gift and you are a life. Thank you for those who have come before us, for those on our wall at Starting Point, and for all those who are part of our journey and part of our journey on this earth. We pray and we ask for this blessing, and we ask for your guidance and direction, and we ask this in your name. Amen. And I'm going to ask all of you, if you don't mind, unmuting yourself, and we'll kind of close out with the we version of the Serenity Prayer.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. God's will, not mine, be done.